The first light of morning creeps across the Martian horizon. The sun, smaller, colder, more distant than on Earth, casts a pale orange glow over endless plains of rust-colored dust. Inside a fragile dome, a human stirs awake. Their breath fogs against the thin glass as they gaze out at the barren expanse. For a moment, the silence is absolute, an entire world, empty but for them. In the last episode, we followed humanity's very first day on Mars. The desperate scramble for oxygen, water, food, and shelter. We saw how survival hinged on thin layers of technology and fragile routines. 24 hours that could make or break the future of our species. But today, survival is no longer enough. This episode is about what comes next. How does a handful of temporary shelters grow into the roots of a colony? How do seeds planted in hydroponic trays become the fields that will one day feed thousands? How do machines, powered by the thin Martian sun, begin laying the foundations of a civilization? From campfires in ancient caves to the first cities rising from the Earth's soil, humanity has always turned struggle into growth. Now, on Mars, the story repeats. This is where survival transforms into settlement. Welcome to Astronomical Library. At first, life on Mars was nothing more than a fragile camp clinging to survival. A cluster of prefabricated modules, sealed tight against the hostile air. Oxygen, water, food each measured, rationed, recycled with precision. Every mistake meant risk, and every day was a test of endurance. But humanity has never been content with merely surviving. From the earliest fires in caves to the first ships that crossed oceans, survival was only the beginning. The real story has always been growth, expansion, transformation. On Mars, the same pattern is unfolding. Slowly, the outpost begins to change. Habitats are no longer just imported from Earth. They are grown from Martian soil. Robots churn the red regolith into bricks. 3D printers layer them into protective walls, shielding settlers from radiation. What began as temporary shelters evolve into the foundations of a village. Inside, greenhouses hum with life. Rows of hydroponic crops stretch beneath glowing LEDs, their roots drinking recycled water. The air, once dry and sterile, now carries the faint scent of plants. This is more than food production. It is the beginning of an ecosystem, the first breath of Mars turning toward habitability. Step by step, the camp transforms into something larger, a colony. With each structure raised, each system expanded, the settlers push back against the planet's silence. Roads of compacted dust link habitats together. Storage domes rise like outposts of human ambition. Energy grids hum, water tanks glisten in the faint light, and green patches glow like Earth transplanted to another world. And yet, every achievement comes at a price. Each advancement demands resources, power, labor. Mars is not generous. It offers no fertile soil, no thick atmosphere, no easy harvest. Everything must be engineered, extracted, or created from scratch. But that is also its promise. Mars is a blank canvas. Where once there was only dust and stone, humanity can now draw the outlines of a future city. A city not inherited, but built, brick by brick, seed by seed, dream by dream. On Mars, farming is not about planting seeds into the ground and waiting for rain. It is an intricate dance of technology, biology, and human ingenuity. Each method of cultivation becomes a lifeline. Each leaf of green the result of careful engineering. The earliest Martian farms are hydroponic plants grown in water, enriched with nutrients. Picture long racks stacked with trays, roots dangling into a carefully balanced solution. Every drop is precious. Water is mined from ice buried beneath the regolith, then purified and recycled endlessly. Hydroponics is efficient. Crops grow quickly, oxygen is replenished, and waste can be converted into fertilizer. The International Space Station has already proven this concept with small lettuce and mustard plants. But on Mars, the scale must expand 1,000-fold. Imagine warehouses glowing with LED light, feeding a colony one harvest at a time. Some engineers propose an even more advanced method: miroponics. Instead of submerging roots in liquid, plants are suspended in the air, misted with nutrient-rich water droplets. The advantage: even less water is needed, and plants grow faster, healthier, and with fewer diseases. NASA has experimented with aeroponics for decades. On Mars, it could become the gold standard for food efficiency. Picture astronauts in a pressurized greenhouse, walking between rows of roots hanging in mid-air, glowing under artificial sunlight. The very air inside smells of fresh growth, an oasis against the sterile, metallic backdrop of the habitat. Beyond plants, there are organisms even more resilient: algae and bacteria. In giant bioreactors, algae bloom in thick green swirls, producing proteins, carbohydrates, oils, and most importantly, oxygen. They can be harvested as food supplements, animal feed, or even turned into microbes, too, have their role. Certain bacteria can detoxify Martian soil by breaking down perchlorates, deadly chemicals that would otherwise poison crops. Others could be engineered to fix nitrogen, enriching the soil, so that, one day, open-air farming may become possible. Humanity may not rely only on Earth's plants. Scientists imagine genetically modified crops built specifically for Mars. Potatoes engineered to resist perchlorates, wheat that thrives in low gravity, soybeans that produce extra proteins under reduced sunlight. These crops are not science fiction, they are already in development on Earth. The leap to Mars would be their ultimate test. Not simply surviving, but flourishing in a world never meant to sustain them. No farm on Mars will succeed without machines. Robots tend crops, monitor nutrient levels, and adjust lighting. Artificial intelligence tracks growth cycles, predicts disease outbreaks, and maximizes yield with minimal waste. In a world where every calorie counts, AI becomes as vital as sunlight. Yet perhaps the greatest harvest is not food, but hope. Imagine a colonist stepping into a greenhouse after weeks of gray dust storms outside. The warm humidity, the smell of basil, the sight of bright green leaves, it is a sensory reminder of Earth. Farming on Mars is not only survival, it is civilization. Crops feed people, yes, but they also stabilize moods, inspire art, and create community. A single flower grown under Martian skies might mean more to a settler than 100 machines. From hydroponics to aeroponics, algae to engineered crops, microbes to machines. Agriculture on Mars is not one system, but many, interwoven into a delicate balance. Together, they do more than feed a colony. They lay the foundation for society, industry, and culture. On a dead world, farming becomes humanity's most radical act, to plant life where none was meant to exist. But food is only the beginning. A greenhouse may sustain the body, but a colony needs more than calories to thrive. If agriculture is the beating heart of a Martian settlement, then industry and infrastructure are its bones and muscles. Steel, concrete, glass, plastics, energy grids, communication networks. Without them, Mars remains nothing more than an outpost clinging to survival. With them, it becomes something else. The seed of a true civilization. The question is, how do we build factories without Earth? How do we forge metals, construct habitats, and generate power when every resource must be pulled from the very soil and sky of Mars itself? This is where survival transforms into creation. The story of Martian industry is the story of humanity learning, once again, how to shape the world around us. Survival is never enough. If farming is the heartbeat of a colony, then industry is its skeleton, its muscles, and its hands, the tools with which settlers will sculpt Mars into a home. No human settlement can thrive without the ability to produce, to build, to repair, and to expand. On Mars, this demand is not a distant concern, but an immediate necessity. Consider energy the foundation of all industry. On Earth, we take it for granted. Flick a switch and light pours into the room. Fuel arrives in endless streams by ship and pipeline. On Mars, every watt must be earned. Solar panels, vast and glittering, will spread across the plains, harvesting light from a sun 50% weaker than what shines on Earth. But when dust storms sweep the planet, darkening the skies for weeks, those panels will be as lifeless as the rocks beneath them. For such moments, nuclear reactors become the heartbeat of survival. Compact fission units, small enough to fit on a cargo rocket, can power entire habitats. With them, Heat flows through the walls, machines continue to run, and life does not flicker out when the sky turns black. In the distant future, perhaps even fusion, the fire of the stars themselves, may be harnessed to drive Martian industry into a golden age. With power secured, the settlers turn to materials. Here, the Martian soil, the regolith, ceases to be just dust and rock. Hidden within it are the raw ingredients of civilization. Iron, aluminum, and titanium can be extracted with energy-intensive processes, refined into beams and alloys. Silica, abundant in the soil, can be melted into glass for windows, domes, and greenhouses. Even the carbon dioxide of the thin Martian atmosphere, useless for human lungs, becomes a treasure processed into carbon fiber or used as a feedstock for plastics. The very dust beneath their boots can be pressed and shaped into bricks. On Earth, this might seem primitive. On Mars, it is elegant efficiency. Sulfur-based concrete, forged from local sulfur, mixed with regolith, can cure without water. Essential trait on a world where liquid water is precious beyond measure. Imagine entire habitats, landing pads, or radiation shelters built not from supplies hauled across space, but from the ground settlers stand on. What once seemed like barren wasteland becomes the very fabric of new cities. Then comes manufacturing, the transformation of raw matter into useful tools. On Earth, the loss of a spare part is a minor inconvenience. On Mars, it could mean catastrophe. A broken air valve, a snapped water pipe, a damaged visor, each could end lives if not replaced quickly. Enter 3D printing, not as novelty, but as salvation. Printers will sit at the heart of every outpost, ready to produce replacement parts from powdered regolith, metals, or polymers created on-site. The colony will not wait for shipments from Earth. It will print its own survival. But industry cannot exist in isolation. It requires connection. Roads to move goods, tunnels to link habitats, and systems that bind outposts into networks. On Mars, vehicles will crawl across the plains, powered by batteries or methane fuel, synthesized from local carbon dioxide and hydrogen drawn from ice. Underground, settlers may carve vast caverns into the rock, serving as both transit routes and safe zones against radiation. Above ground, drones could one day skim the thin air, ferrying supplies between domes. Piece by piece, the colony will weave itself into a functioning organism, where goods, energy, and people flow like blood through veins. What emerges from this process is more than infrastructure, it is independence. Each furnace lit, each beam cast, each printed part marks another step away from Earth's shadow. The settlers are not just surviving, they are laying the foundations of a civilization that builds for itself. In the glow of factory lights beneath a crimson sky, Mars stops being a frontier. It begins to resemble a second cradle of humanity. Imagine waking up in a small room, its walls not made of Earth's concrete, but of sulfur bricks pressed from Martian regolith. The surface is rough, faintly metallic, but solid and reassuring proof that even on a hostile world, humans can carve shelter out of dust. Outside the dome-shaped window, the pale Martian sun spills across the red horizon. The glass is thick, infused with silica drawn from the sand, shielding you from invisible cosmic rays. Beyond the habitat, on the industrial edge of the colony, faint plumes rise into the thin sky. They're not smoke from wood or coal, but the vapor trails of furnaces working tirelessly, pulling iron, aluminum, and titanium from the soil. The deep hum of compressors and extractors fills the air, a new kind of heartbeat, the rhythm of a civilization being born. In the central fabrication hub, robotic arms swing with precise, almost graceful movements. Engineers feed refined regolith powder into towering 3D printers. Hours later, out slide the panels for new habitats. Structural supports for tunnels, even replacement parts for oxygen generators. Every product that emerges isn't just an object, it's freedom. Proof that the colony no longer depends entirely on Earth for survival. Past the workshop lies the energy district. Rows of solar panels stretch across the desert floor, gleaming like mirrors under the weak Martian sun. On windy days, tall turbines spin slowly, storing power in vast underground batteries. And in the distance, where engineers test compact nuclear reactors, there's a quiet sense of awe, a realization that even on a planet with no forests, No oil, no rivers, humanity has found a way to harness energy from nothing. Nearby water ice mines operate day and night. Machines bore deep into the soil, pulling out frozen reserves that once lay untouched for billions of years. The ice is melted, filtered, and split into oxygen and hydrogen air to breathe, fuel to burn. What once was barren dust now flows through pipes, sustaining life itself. You walk through a construction zone, where more habitats are being added each month. Workers in pressurized suits weld beams under the protective glow of floodlights, while autonomous rovers haul loads of regolith to be transformed into bricks. The colony expands not in leaps, but in steady pulses, like a living organism growing cell by cell. This is no longer survival. This is the birth of industry on Mars, an economy built from dust, powered by sunlight and ingenuity, laying the foundation for everything to come. Farms that can grow forests under domes, factories that can produce ships and machines, and perhaps, one day, cities that rival those of Earth. Industry alone cannot make a civilization. The mines, the reactors, the factories, they are only the skeleton. What truly brings a colony to life is the people who inhabit it, the rhythms of their days, the culture they create, the fragile bonds that keep them united in a place where survival depends on trust. Picture the heart of the colony, a vast, transparent dome filled with greenery. It's the communal hub, part park, part farm, part sanctuary. Families gather here after long shifts. Children chase each other across artificial turf, their laughter echoing against the dome's curved glass. The trees genetically modified to survive on Mars don't just provide oxygen. They offer something just as vital, a reminder of Earth. For a moment, under their shade, settlers can pretend they are back home. Education becomes a central pillar. In classrooms carved into regolith bunkers, children learn not only math and history, but also Martian geology, life support engineering, and space navigation. On Mars, every child grows up knowing how to read air pressure gauges and water recyclers. Knowledge is no longer optional, it is survival. And then there is culture. Humans, no matter where they go, bring stories, music, and rituals. Perhaps the first Martian festival will celebrate the anniversary of the landing, with lights projected across the dome to mimic the night sky of Earth. Perhaps musicians will craft instruments from Martian alloys, giving birth to sounds no one has ever heard before. Out of necessity, a new identity emerges, not just Earthlings, but Martians. But life is not without its struggles. In the cramped habitats, privacy is scarce. Tensions flare when supplies run low, or when communication with Earth is delayed by 20 minutes each way. There are moments of grief too. Accidents will happen, and the loss of even one life echoes loudly in such a fragile community. Every Martian must learn resilience, not only against the planet, but against the loneliness of being so far from the cradle of humanity. Yet even in hardship, society adapts. New forms of governance are tested, small councils of scientists, engineers, and citizens, deciding together how resources are shared, how laws are enforced, how conflicts are resolved. In such an unforgiving environment, democracy may evolve into something more direct, more collective, forged by necessity. Slowly, daily life on Mars begins to resemble something ordinary. Work shifts are scheduled. Markets emerge where settlers trade surplus food or handmade tools. Digital theaters stream Earth's films, while Martian artists upload their own creations back across the void. What began as an outpost of survival starts to feel like a home. And that is perhaps the greatest transformation. Mars is no longer just a place humans visit. It becomes a society, fragile, imperfect, but alive. For all its promise, life on Mars will always walk a razor's edge. The very things that make Mars a candidate for colonization, its thin atmosphere, its frozen water, its resources, also what make it so perilous. Every breath, every sip of water, every calorie of food is the result of human engineering. Strip away the machines, and Mars reverts to what it has always been: a cold, dead desert. The first and most immediate threat is the atmosphere, or rather the lack of it. With an average pressure less than 1% of Earth's, Mars cannot hold liquid water on its surface. Step outside without a suit, and the moisture in your lungs and blood would begin to boil away in seconds. Even inside habitats, settlers live with the knowledge that one puncture, one failed airlock, could mean catastrophe. A single crack in the dome might not just destroy a home but jeopardize hundreds of lives. Radiation is another silent enemy. Without a magnetic field, Mars is bombarded daily by cosmic rays and solar storms. On Earth, our thick atmosphere shields us. On Mars, settlers must bury their homes under meters of soil or live in underground caverns to avoid cancers, genetic damage, and long-term illnesses. Yet the irony is cruel. The deeper underground you go for safety, the farther you are from the light and openness that humans psychologically crave. And then there's gravity. At only 38% of Earth's pull, it may seem liberating at first, till the consequences set in. Bones lose density, muscles atrophy, hearts struggle to pump blood properly. Children born on Mars may grow taller, with weaker skeletons, potentially unable to ever live on Earth again. The very act of adapting to Mars could sever humanity's connection to its home planet. Food security remains fragile too. Hydroponic farms and greenhouses must operate flawlessly. One crop failure, one fungal infection, could wipe out a season's harvest. On Earth, a bad harvest means higher prices. On Mars, it means famine. Water, though present in ice, must be extracted, purified, and recycled endlessly. A broken pump or contamination in the system could trigger disaster in days. Even energy, the heartbeat of the colony, is precarious. Solar panels are vulnerable to the very dust storms that sweep across the planet for weeks at a time, blotting out the sun. Nuclear reactors may offer stability, but they bring their own dangers. Radiation leaks, waste management, political disputes. Without power, air stops circulating, lights go out, heat vanishes, and Mars reclaims its silence. But perhaps the greatest challenge is not physical, it is psychological. Mars is a world of isolation. Communication with Earth lags by up to 20 minutes each way, erasing the comfort of real-time conversation. Holidays, family events, even tragedies unfold on Earth, with settlers watching only from afar. Loneliness gnaws at the mind. Claustrophobia festers in sealed habitats. Some scientists predict that the psychological strain may be as deadly as the lack of oxygen. In the end, every aspect of Martian life is a constant negotiation with death. Systems must work perfectly, communities must remain cohesive, and individuals must find meaning in the face of relentless danger. Mars does not forgive mistakes. It does not bend to comfort. It demands resilience, both technological and human, at a level our species has never before endured. Yet it is precisely in this fragility that the story of Mars becomes most human. It reminds us how thin the line between survival and extinction really isn't, how extraordinary it is that we even dare to try. If Mars pushes us to the limits of our technology, it also forces us to confront the limits of our morality. Beyond rockets, greenhouses, and reactors lies a deeper question. Should we even colonize Mars? And if we do, what kind of society will we create there? One of the first ethical debates centers on contamination both ways. Humans carry with them trillions of microbes, an invisible ecosystem that could alter Mars forever. If Mars harbors even the faintest traces of microbial life beneath its surface, our very presence risks destroying it before we can even study it. For some scientists, this is unthinkable. Preserving a second Genesis, if it exists, might be one of the greatest responsibilities humanity has ever faced. Others argue the opposite, that if life exists on Mars, perhaps humanity's arrival is not destruction, but the beginning of a shared evolution, a mingling of two biospheres. Then comes the question of ownership. Who has the right to Mars? International treaties, like the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, declare that no nation can claim sovereignty over celestial bodies. Yet private companies are already staking visions of mining rights, resource extraction, and even land parcels for future settlers. If resources are finite, who decides who benefits? Will Mars become humanity's shared frontier, or simply another theater for inequality and exploitation? And what of the settlers themselves? Colonists will not just be scientists or explorers. Over time, they will become families, communities, entire generations born under a different sky. Will these Martian-born humans consider themselves Earthlings? Or will a new identity, a Martian identity, emerge? Already, some ethicists suggest that the first Martian-born children may one day argue for independence, demanding freedom from Earth's control. History tells us that colonies rarely stay loyal forever. There are also moral costs in the risks we take. Colonizing Mars is dangerous, deadly. Even is it ethical to encourage settlers to go, knowing the dangers? To raise children on a planet where radiation, accidents, and psychological isolation pose constant threats. Some argue that choosing to start a family on Mars is itself an ethical dilemma. Is it fair to a child to bring them into a world so hostile? Yet for all these questions, there is also a profound philosophical allure. Colonizing Mars may not just be about survival, it may be about transcendence. About proving that humanity can reach beyond its cradle, that we are not confined to one fragile world. For some, this is a moral duty, to carry life, consciousness, and meaning into the wider cosmos. To leave Mars untouched, they argue, would be to abandon our role as creators and explorers. And perhaps the deepest ethical reflection lies in the mirror Mars holds up to Earth. If we dream of building a just, sustainable, cooperative society on another planet, why not first build it here? Mars forces us to ask, what lessons will we bring from Earth and what mistakes must we leave behind? Will Mars be a chance to start fresh, to rewrite the human story? Or will it simply repeat the same cycles of conflict, greed, and inequality on a new stage? Mars is not just a frontier of rock and dust. It is a frontier of values, of choices, of identity, and in deciding how we step onto that world, we may ultimately redefine what it means to be human. Every great human journey begins not only with technology, but with visionaries, those bold enough to imagine a future that does not yet exist. When it comes to Mars, a handful of leaders, institutions, and even nations are already competing to write the first chapter of humanity's interplanetary story. Perhaps no name looms larger than Elon Musk. Through SpaceX, Musk has made colonization not just a dream, but a declared mission. His vision is simple, yet staggering. A self-sustaining city on Mars within the next century. To achieve this, SpaceX is building the Starship, the most powerful rocket ever designed, capable of carrying over 100 people at once. In Musk's words, humanity must become a multiplanetary species to survive long-term threats, such as asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, or even our own self-destruction. But critics argue his timelines are wildly optimistic, his methods untested, and his assumptions dangerously simplistic. Still, his sheer determination has already reshaped the space industry and pushed Mars colonization from science fiction into serious policy discussion. But Musk is not alone. NASA, with its Artemis program and planned Mars missions, envisions a slower, methodical approach. For NASA, Mars colonization is not just about survival, it is about science. Before colonization can happen, NASA aims to place humans on Mars in the 2030s, to study the geology, the potential for life, and to prepare the way for sustainable exploration. Their vision is less about cities, more about stepping stones, learning to live on Mars, as humanity once learned to live in Antarctica. Other nations have their own ambitions. China, with its rapidly advancing space program, has openly declared Mars as a target for future missions. The Chinese National Space Administration plans to land astronauts on Mars by 2033, followed by building bases in the decades after. Unlike the Apollo era, this is no longer a space race of two superpowers. It is a multipolar contest where nations see Mars not only as a scientific prize, but also as a symbol of prestige, leadership, and geopolitical influence. And beyond governments and billionaires, there are global collectives, organizations like the Mars Society, founded by Robert Zubrin, which advocate for human exploration and settlement through grassroots passion and ingenuity. Their plans may lack billions of dollars, but they carry a moral weight. That Mars should belong to all of humanity, not to a single flag or corporation. What unites all these visions is not agreement, but tension. Musk dreams of rapid colonization. NASA insists on cautious science. China pushes for national prestige. Grassroots organizations call for shared stewardship. Together, they paint a picture of a future that is uncertain, contested, and perhaps inevitable. Yet behind these strategies and rivalries lies something profoundly human. the refusal to accept limits. Every rocket launched toward Mars, every blueprint for a base, every timeline scribbled on a whiteboard is an echo of the same ancient impulse that once pushed our ancestors to cross oceans, scale mountains, and sail into the unknown. And just as history tells us, vision alone is not enough. These dreams will collide with reality, with budgets, with politics, with ethics, with the unforgiving physics of another planet. Still, it is in these dreams that the seeds of the future are planted. Because, without visionaries, Mars remains just a red dot in the sky. With them, it becomes the next great stage for humanity's unfolding story. So where does this leave us? Standing on the threshold of a new era, with one foot still firmly on Earth, and the other daring to step onto Mars. The road ahead is neither short nor straight. It is a path defined by engineering challenges, financial battles, political negotiations, and the fragility of human ambition itself. In the coming decades, the first true tests will unfold. Will rockets like Starship reliably carry crews and cargo across the millions of kilometers separating Earth and Mars? Will nuclear or solar power systems be able to generate enough energy to sustain life in an environment where a single dust storm can last for months? Will governments and corporations find a way to cooperate? Will they compete for dominance, risking a Martian version of the colonial struggles that scarred Earth's past? There are deeper questions, two questions of ethics and philosophy. Should Mars belong to the First Nation or company that plants a flag, or should it be governed as a shared heritage of all humankind? Will colonization repeat the mistakes of earthly empires, or will it mark the beginning of a more united species? And, perhaps most profoundly, what does it mean to call another planet home? Yet, for all these uncertainties, one truth endures. Humanity has never truly been content with the horizon. From the caves to the coasts, from the sails of wooden ships to the rockets piercing the atmosphere, we have always moved outward. Mars is the next horizon, not because it is easy, but because it is there, waiting. The road ahead will not be walked by a single generation. It will be a relayed step, each mission, each experiment handed down to the next, slowly weaving the fragile thread of civilization onto alien soil. And someday, perhaps centuries from now, a child will be born under the pale salmon sky of Mars who has never known Earth. For that child, Mars will not be the frontier. It will simply be home. That is the true promise of colonization. Not just survival, not just science, but transformation. A chance for humanity to evolve, to expand, to imagine ourselves not as citizens of one planet, but as members of a cosmic story still being written. And so, the road ahead is long, but it has already begun. Before we close, let's remember, in this episode, we traced humanity's grand vision, why Mars, how we could survive, and what industries might arise from its red soil. But so far, much of it feels distant, almost abstract. In the next episode, we're going to bring it closer. We'll step into the boots of the first colonists and ask, what is daily life on Mars really like? How do you breathe in a world where the air is toxic? What does food taste like when every bite comes from a lab or a greenhouse dome? How does your mind cope with the silence, the isolation, the endless desert stretching beyond the horizon? And perhaps the hardest question of all, what does it mean to build a sense of home on a planet that has never known life? If that's a journey you don't want to miss, make sure to subscribe to Astronomical Library. Hit the like button and share this video with a friend who dreams of space. And before you go, tell us in the comments, would you volunteer to be among the first settlers on Mars, knowing the risks and the history you'd help write? This is just the beginning of our story. Humanity's next chapter awaits on the Red Planet with us, here at Astronomical Library.